So I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the personnel meeting. And first is public comment. Comments and rules that Mrs. Cullen spoke in terms of the curriculum meeting apply here too. So do we have public comment? I don't see that we've had anyone additional comment other than board members. No, not seeing any public comment. We'll move to the two items on the agenda for discussion. The first being the Director of Transportation job description. Mrs. McHale, can you summarize this for us? There are obviously some changes noted.
So as everyone's aware, Mr. Geiger has put in his letter of retirement and he will be leaving us. Unfortunately, he did give us plenty of time to recruit for his position. So usually when we have someone leaving, we take a look at the job description and make any necessary changes. There's a few changes to this that we're recommending. Number 5, we're taking out Edulog and putting in just transportation software in the event that they were to switch to another system, which they are actually in the process of doing now. I believe they've started training in the Versatrans system. So, and you know, that could change down the road. So just to keep that generic, we've changed that. And then just a few word changes so that we're all in the same, we're all following the same pattern down. Supervised, we added that in addition to review and approve the submission of all required state reports. And again, took out by Department of Secretary. They are mandated reports, they come from the state. I is just develop the budget and procure supplies, etc., etc. So again, just to define that this individual will be developing the transportation budget. And then the final piece is under terms of employment. As you may remember, in the last Act 93 contract agreement, we added in the Director of Transportation as one of the personnel under that agreement. So just to make sure that that aligns with Act 93 agreement, we've made that change as well. And that is pretty much it for that job description. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question in terms of the transportation software. Do we believe that someone who would apply for this job who has some experience, say it is an Edulog, is that helpful? Does it matter if they aren't in the particular area that we're working in?
Right, so I think that, you know, most software, like in our department, our human resource information software, it's all kind of the same, but again, you know, it has a different platform. But if you're familiar with one type of routing software or, you know, transportation department software, you would be able to have a little bit of an edge over someone who's never touched it before.
I think another piece of good news, pending some surprises, there are 4 primary people who interact with that software, and so 3 of them will still be. And so that is always good to be able to lean across the aisle and say, hey, can you show me how to do this type of thing if it is something. I just wanted to speak to the fact that we've had it posted. We did post it as soon as we knew in December, just to kind of see what would happen, to give us plenty of time that if we needed to go back out. We had 7 applicants, and 5 of them, I would say, actually met our qualifications. 2 of them, I think, were people who apply for a lot of jobs and perhaps did not read the job qualifications.
Or did.
Yeah, that's right. So I was actually pretty happy because it is a pretty small group within transportation. For directors of transportation, they are generally one-offs, and then if it's outsourced, right, that's another situation. So you don't have, there are not a lot of bodies that are doing this job within a 50-mile radius. So I was happy when we had 5 what I would consider real candidates. We have narrowed it down to 3 to bring in for first round. We prioritized that we thought 3 were stronger. And so we have set up that by the end of the month, we will at least have had a first round of these 3. So whether it's a successful candidate, we know there will be a minimum of 2 rounds from that standpoint. And so we'll see how the first round goes. We may say no, we're going to go back out there and see what happens. But I'm very happy with the progress in terms of how early it is, so that if we get somebody in place to be able to get trained before Mr. Geiger gets out of here before the end of the school year, I think would be really, really helpful. So we are making progress in that. We'll have an update sometime in February in terms of where we are.
Yeah.
So, you're still leaving it posted though?
We are, yes. Yeah,
Do you have an end?
well, I think the first date did end.
First date
It's not
did end.
posted, I just looked.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
So
first
hold
date ended.
off.
I wanted to know
So
if it
we're
was
gonna do the
still
first
posted.
round interviews, see how we feel about the candidates we have there, so then we can open up again.
I wear a lot of hats.
So yeah, tonight it is a unique group, so that's excellent news that we had 7 individuals apply, and as you said, 5 that had transportation experience. Phenomenal.
What's happening?
Okay, are board members accepting of putting this on the agenda for next Tuesday night?
Next Tuesday.
Okay, then it'll appear on that agenda. The second item is the consideration of putting teaching assistants in the building-based substitutes. Mrs. McHale, you want
So you
to
may
explain this
recall,
issue?
approximately 4 years ago, I came to you and asked for teacher building-based substitutes. And at that time, we were just sort of doing a trial with 3 in the elementary, 1 at the high school, 1 to float within the middle schools. And it worked out so well, it helped our fill rates, and they're to be used mainly when school has already started and you can't fill that position. There's no chance that you're going to get someone now to come in because the class has already started. So then I came to you 2 years later and asked if you would increase the number of building-based substitutes I honestly don't recall what it was, I think 5 elementary, 1 for each middle school and 2 at the high school. And then we increased it to a full complement at the elementary, so each elementary has their own building-based sub, each middle school and the high school has 3. And this year, we are fortunate to have all of those positions filled. We've pulled from those positions to fill long-term substitute in areas. The principals have an opportunity to observe these folks on a day-to-day basis so that when something opens up, short-term, long-term, they can pull these building-based substitutes and then we backfill that. So it's worked out tremendously for the teachers. So we're kind of asking to start the process again with teacher associates and personal care assistants. The fill rates have been low. There's several reasons for that. It's not our staff just calling out for sick and personal time. A lot of it has to do with folks that resign again at the beginning of the school year. Maybe they're into it a couple weeks and they said, not for me, or I have something else. So then we're left trying to, post-recruit and hire that person. In the meantime, we have this extra coverage that needs to be filled. So we're sourcing out per diem TAs and PCAs, and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But if they're left unfilled, we're now in a non-compliance situation with an IEP, and pupil services calling up and saying, hey, this is serious. We need these filled. So what we're hoping to do is start again the process small. We would like to ask for 2 of the teaching assistants at the high school because their numbers warrant that, and then 2 to float among the elementary. The elementary does not seem to have as big of an unfilled rate as the high school and the middle schools, and then 1 to float amongst the middle schools. So it would be 5 we would start with.
So how many would we have total?
We would have 5 total. 1 for the middle schools.
I thought you just said we added some last year and the year before.
I'm sorry, those were the teachers.
These are not teachers.
These are teaching assistants
So
and
these-
personal
So we
care
have the
assistants.
substitute teachers per building, and then we have the teaching assistants that'll float. Is that what you're saying?
We already have the building-based substitutes teachers in every single building now,
Okay.
and 3 at the high school, so they report there every day. We're asking for kind of the same thing with teacher assistants, but not 1 for every building. The numbers just don't warrant 1 at every elementary school every single day. So we're looking for 2 that can float where the need is, where the need exists.
And there are currently no building-based substitutes for the support staff.
Correct, there are none.
These would be the first 5 within the district.
Right, and we would be the 3rd school to try this.
So can they fill, so these people would not be able to fill in for a teacher who's out, they'd only be able to fill in for a support staff person who's out?
Correct.
And is that because they would have, their qualifications are not the same?
It could be,
Because I know a lot of times the teaching assistants are also certified teachers.
they are, but it would be what they sign up for with Source for Teachers, ESS. A lot of people that have teaching certifications don't necessarily want to be in the classroom. I take my assistant Nicole, our benefits specialist, she has a teaching certification. She doesn't wanna be in the classroom at this time in her life, so, you know, she's working for Human Resources. And you'll find that with folks that work for Source for Teachers, if they are a teacher substitute, and we try putting them into a teaching assistant position, that they're like, I didn't sign up for that. And then it goes the other way too. If you're a teaching assistant, you're a support staff person, they may hold a teaching certification, but they don't want that classroom responsibility. Or for whatever reason, this is what they wanna do, they wanna support the teacher. So we're willing to have them, for them to guarantee their time to Penridge, we would like to offer them an additional $5 per day. Right now, our teaching assistants are paid $85 per diem. We would like to offer the incentive of $90 per diem, which is more than the other two districts doing that, but less than the IU. So we feel we're in a good place, we're kind of in the middle with that. If we were to, be successful in recruiting these 5 individuals, again, through Source for Teachers, we would be looking at, I think my number was, if we could fill the position for the remainder of the year, student days only, it would be an additional $2,225.
So, some other districts that I've worked in have had setups where they stagger the math classes throughout the day and they stagger the reading and writing classes throughout the day. Then they have a building sub, and that sub is scheduled to basically float from classroom to classroom and push in for, you know, a given period of time, to help with remediation, enrichment, you know, when they're giving a formative assessment and they can split the kids up, or for reading groups. And there's a set schedule, so the teachers have an expectation that if there isn't someone out and that person's not being utilized, obviously that person gets pulled if someone's out.
Right.
But on the days that nobody's out, those extra hands really can come in and help support every one of the classrooms. And I'm wondering, do we have something set up like that? I remember having this discussion when we talked about hiring building subs, and I think we were supposed to get some kind of a plan on how that was going to be laid out and how they're gonna be utilized when we don't have people out. And I don't remember seeing what that was, and so I don't know, you know, I don't know if I just don't remember or if it never came back to us, but I'm just curious what that's going to look like, because now we'll have potentially 2 people in a building. Can we utilize them during that time to help provide those needs that we aren't, you know, that we can't?
I kind of have that same question. I think it's really easy too when you have one sub, that, like you have for the teachers, if they're one person, they stay in that building that whole day. And it'll be good for the high school if they've got 2 of them in that building, that if there's ones that float between the 7 elementary buildings, that would be hard, I think, for them to have a set
Like
schedule.
a week or something.
Yeah, but I think it would be like ineffective, because if, I don't know, I see that, you know, the teachers would be, it would be so infrequent that they would be able to follow that schedule, that I think the teachers really would be able to really prepare or depend on that extra body there on a regular
And
basis.
when we looked at the data, the spring is always worse than the fall in terms of failed defense. And we came up with 5 because the average currently is 4.6 days. And if you get rid of September, it's 5.1 days already that we have support staff out, and it's generally 2 to 2.5 at the high school. And then the other 3 are spread between middle school and elementary, which is why we came up with median. So we are expecting that generally, there have been 3 days since November 1st, where at the elementary level, one of these people would have been free. And so that means, if you take this, so there have been 3 days in those 2 months of school, plus the first week and a half of January, where one of them would have been free. It never would have been a situation with 2. And so I agree with you, I don't think they will have a regular schedule. I think there will be a home-based building, and we'll probably do that by size, so that if there is a chance that somebody is not filled, then they'll have a place that they report if they're not assigned someplace. I think it will be pretty rare. As opposed to the teachers, all of the building subs do in fact have a Plan A schedule. That if they are not, often they're sent to another building, because somebody might have two that's out, so they go from north to south. But if not, they do have a schedule, and it is generally support in terms of classroom. And some of it has to do with what their specialty is. If they're a math teacher, it's probably different support than if they're an ELA teacher in terms of how the building utilizes them from that standpoint. So there is that schedule. I don't know what was promised or what was presented to you, but
So is there a
they do have that
consistent,
for the teachers.
is there a consistent plan where all of the buildings are utilizing the building sub in the same way? So that all of the
Currently,
teachers
no.
are getting the same
Currently,
benefit?
the principals are making that determination with their teachers in terms of where those needs are.
Yeah, I don't think you
So.
can keep it consistent between all buildings, I think it would have to be building specific,
Well,
based off of what their.
The whole point to me is we have a problem with fill rate in both sets of
Right.
positions.
Yeah.
So
Again, it is,
you're not gonna have a lot of availability,
Yeah.
at
Well, I
least
mean, I think
as
some
I
that
understand
you
these
do,
statistics.
because the building sub positions, you would, I mean, you're still filling those sub positions, so you're not, I mean, are we that regularly using?
Yes.
That's what he's saying, yes.
well,
thought you
the
said with the
number I gave
assistants.
you was with support. with
Yeah,
support. I
but I'm
didn't pull
talking
that
about
number for the
building
subs.
subs, those building
But-
subs are still being utilized in their Plan A position. at
We
the
still
time.
routinely have failed to fill spots every day
Right.
across the district. Now, sometimes they're half days and so somebody doesn't go, and, you know, those types of things. But we more often than not still have not enough subs to cover what we have. And some of that is not enough subs to cover, right? There are fewer subs available and there are more days that are required of subs in terms of teachers being out. Those two things are a bad mix currently across the county. Cambridge also, but across the county, that's
Huge.
true. This all started because we sat with Source for Teachers. I had a meeting in November just to kind of get a sense for our personnel and to see what our numbers were. And so the numbers actually for support staff jumped off the page, but we learned that some of that was positions that had not been filled. And so they were counting as failed to fill vacancies, but they really were vacancies. And I see that as differently than a sub not picking up a job. And so that's why, because originally I said, well, I'm gonna recommend one different building, because it was worse than teachers in terms of the numbers. But it really was vacancies, and now that those vacancies are full, those numbers are a little more reasonable, which is why we're
And
coming
you'll
to
see some of
five.
those coming to you for approval in January.
Right,
We'll
and-
fill
and-
some of those TA positions.
And it really is to see, see whether this model works. Source for Teachers does
Right.
think that for the guarantee that you're driving the same direction every day, and for those people who, now there are some subs who don't wanna work 5 days a week.
I was gonna say, these are
And so
optional
those people-
positions,
Exactly
right?
right,
So if I decide, if I'm one of those people and I decide to go to Boston, as I have decided this week, I would turn down that job, no matter how many people or districts offered it to me.
Right. Generally, the people who sign up for these are the people who wanna work every day and wanna work in one place. They wanna, either they're local, because they live here, and so they wanna
Right.
do that, or, and I think the high school jobs will fill first, because they are at the same building every day. The middle school and elementary school, there isn't going to be that guarantee, you're still gonna be within 20 miles, but you're not gonna be at the same place, but.
I have some folks that maybe want to get into Penridge as well. They would like.
And with
they
the
would like
number
to
of
eventually
failed
work
fills,
for
the
us.
$2,200 that we're talking about is going to be available within the sub-budget. This will not be beyond our current sub-budget,
No,
because we
definitely
unfortunately
available.
save money in our sub-budget because we don't get
Right.
subs every day. And so when we save them at $90 a day, we get to that 2,200. So this will not be an increase to the sub-budget, we're just hoping that it will decrease the failed to fills and give us some reliable people within the district.
And these people will be hired directly, not through Source for Teachers, right?
They would be hired through Source for Teachers.
So we're letting, so these constant people, are we picking, we're not picking them?
We have the option to interview if we would like, yes,
That was my
always.
question.
So if we're interviewing anyway, what's the benefit of sending them through Source for Teachers? Because they're taking 30%, which is what we're spending if we pay for their benefits and stuff directly.
They will manage it, they'll recruit, they'll hire them, and again, you don't have the benefits attached, you don't have the pieces attached.
Right, but their fee cancels out the benefits and PSERS, right? It breaks even. And
No,
so
it's still,
I
it's
guess
still,
my concern is
I
we're
would
gonna
have
be
to actually run the
hiring.
numbers, but it's still better to, it was more cost effective going through them.
I guess I thought from the last time we had this discussion that it was like a wash, but, you know, would then take more time on the administration's part as opposed to them doing, you know, the work for
Running
it.
the systems, right?
And we wouldn't
and
currently be
calling,
talking
et
about
cetera.
benefit positions simply because of the number of days that are left and the number of hours. Is that true?
I would have to run the numbers and see
Okay.
how that works out with ACA,
Yeah,
honestly,
it may.
it's a look back period and all of
Okay.
that. It's generally 30 hours a
But
week.
that was my question is, like, will they be a higher quality sub? Like, can we vet them? Would we interview them? If they're gonna be in our school every day, that would be something.
So we do that for the substitute, the building-based substitute teacher subs, the principals do want to interview those, individuals, because as you said, they're coming into their building every day. And we certainly have that option as well to do that with the teaching assistants.
As
I
well as,
think our-
sorry.
I think our biggest hurdle right now is going to be to attract individuals to come and do this. You know, again, the lower the unemployment, the harder it is to fill positions like this.
Well, and so, and maybe can you explain this to me, because maybe I'm misunderstanding, but if they are hired through Source for Teachers, they don't get benefits, and,
Not those.
or the PSERS, so that goes, so that 30% goes to Source for Teachers. But if they're hired directly through us, instead of that 30% going to Source for Teachers, that 30% goes to the employee, and now they get PSERS and benefits. So if I'm looking at both positions, and I would prefer to be hired through the school district, because now that 30% is going to me as an employee rather than going to a middleman, just simply for giving us their name. And if we're gonna interview them anyway based on quality, don't you think we would attract better people if those people are getting the added benefits as opposed to us just giving it to some middleman? Who, by the way, I've raised this concern for a long time, I don't think that the quality of people that we get through Source for Teachers, in my opinion, they take anyone with a pulse who can meet the recommendations and send in the forms. And I think that we as a school district have a higher standard than that. And especially if we're gonna be hiring full-time positions, that I think that we would attract a better quality. And if we're gonna do the work anyway with the interviews, why give them the 30%? So that's my perspective.
So I want to address the point of the quality. You're aware, you know, that the state allows you to hire teacher substitutes with a bachelor's degree as long as they have an emergency certification.
For 1
So-
year.
For
They can
1
only
year,
use
it's
their
1 year at a
emergency
time,
for 1
right?
year.
It expires and you have to renew each year, with a fee. So, Source for Teacher substitutes are run through the IU, guest teacher program. We had some issues last year, I'm sure that, you know, that's what you're talking about, some of the folks that came through, there were issues, we read of incident reports, as a group, the HR advisors had asked them to follow up on the incident reports, a little more rigorous than they did in the past, so we instituted that. In addition to that, they have taken a hard look at the guest teacher program and what is contained within that. So when there is an incident and someone maybe uses obscene language, we will then send that request to the IU so that that's incorporated into their guest teaching program. I've personally viewed some of the slides that they go through. They've expanded it in hours and content. I feel they're doing a really good job. It's just I don't think you can control every single person and their actions.
Unless you're hiring them yourself.
Right.
But again, I mean,
Well,
you know, I don't know that you can control everyone.
I get what you're saying, but right now, you're talking about how it's difficult right now to find subs, right? And I think, and I know, you know, people may disagree with me, Souderton has a much easier time finding subs because they hire them directly, they give them bonuses if they work there. For every 15 days, they get a bonus day of pay. And if they do work over the, you know, they get more money, and they get more money, and their buildings are air conditioned. So if I'm on the web, you know, ASOP or whatever, and I'm looking for a job, and I see this one, that's the one I'm taking. And so when you look at what our fill rate is, I'm filling those before I fill these, and that's, you know, these subs see them all. They see them all, and they get to handpick which one of the 30 options they choose. And if I'm looking for a teaching assistant job because I want that stability in a single building, and I see it posted in all these different school districts, but Penn Ridge is hiring me directly, so I'm a Penn Ridge employee, and I'm getting the benefits, and I'm getting the PSERS, I'd rather work for Penn Ridge rather than taking a 30% cut so that the middleman can get it over at a different school district. And so we're gonna attract better people and we're gonna keep them because we're giving them a better deal than most of these other districts that are hiring through Source for Teachers. I get your point about the day-to-day subs, right, and the insurance thing, and you never know if they're gonna go over 5 days a week, or over the 40 hours a week or whatever, and so it's a nightmare, to try to figure that out, right? But this is a full-time employee, so we already know that this person, so you're saying the 30%, you don't know whether you would have to pay it or not in the other situation, because, for the benefits and the insurance, this time you know you're in that situation because it's a full-time employee. So
They back up though, they're not a full-time employee if they're hired by Source for Teachers.
Right,
They're a
but then 30,
substitute.
right, exactly, so
If we
Source for
bring them
Teachers is
on-
now getting that 30% cut off the top instead of the employee. But if we hire that full-time employee
understand.
here, it's gonna cost us the same amount of money, it's just that we're paying them better instead of giving Source for Teachers the cut.
And I think if we would hire them ourselves, we would get a better quality candidate. Could we just see a price breakdown of what it would cost us going through Source for Teachers or having them hired as full-time Penn Ridge employees with their
We
PSERS
can.
outlooks?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's send out a cost comparison, right? We can do that by the end of the week so that people will have time to review it before we bring it back.
Yeah, but you would,
So,
How
if we do hire them, though, they are hired, you have to understand it. If we're gonna hire somebody as a substitute, and we decide, you know what, this is not working, you know what, Source for Teachers, we're done. You know, we really don't want these 5 building-based substitutes anymore. If we hire them, they're ours.
yeah, but you can just make
They're
it a
ours.
long-term day-to-day
And
substitute
that-
position for a year.
That will only go so far before you're encouraged to make them a hired full-time employee, paying union dues, on the books.
Yeah, but isn't the
If
clause
you have a
in
permanent
agreements
position
about
that you're opening up
positions?
and you're giving it to someone, they're going to have union property rights. And then they're going to be.
If these were
your employer.
hires, they would be under the support staff contract, I
They
presume.
would.
So
And
they
then
would
they
have
would be
to follow
entitled,
those rules and regulations.
they would be considered a full-time employee.
You couldn't word the job description as a long-term sub, daily substitute? Because I was a long-term sub and every year I had to reapply for new, I knew that I only had my position, there was no guarantee that there'd be a position for me the following year. So it could just be, it's a one-year thing and then you've gotta re-interview for the following year, They might move up, they might find a different position within the district. But I mean, that would be a little loophole so that you don't have to guarantee give them employment year after year.
And of course, we'd have to, look into our contract as well with ESS and see how what kind of lines we're crossing there as well.
Okay,
for
well, let's do
calling
that.
Substitutes.
Right.
So we'll
We'll
take
do
a
that
look at that.
and come back with a recommendation time for next Tuesday. Okay?
Well, does it need to be Tuesday, or is it going to be the next personnel committee?
Well, if we feel as though we get cost comparisons and we can say, hey, here's what we're gonna do Tuesday, and it
Okay.
fits this conversation, the board then can decide as to whether, let's think of this a little more. But we might be able to come up with a solution that, you know what, this is gonna work for the rest of the year, and whatever.
So you,
And then
you will bring it Tuesday if you can.
If we can, exactly. We'll try to get something out
Yeah,
this
I'll
week
try to
in
get
terms
out
of
mail,
numbers.
email, so you can look at it before Tuesday. It'll be this week.
And teams are only
So are there
parents.
other questions, comments about this proposal and what's done next? Not, I guess we'll hear from the administration
We'll send
on this
something out this
regard.
week.
I'll email out the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's the last agenda item, and the next personnel committee is scheduled for February 4th, presumably in this room. Public comment? Mrs. Furlong? No? And the evening is adjourned.
Hate to disappoint.